Alright, so this is a 4070 and a 7900 XT hooked into one configuration. I'm running it off of a 5800 X3D with 32 gigs of DDR4 RAM, running at 3800 CL14 on an X570 Aorus Master. There is my Cryoraptor. Right now it's down because I snapped the thermistor wire on it. So I'll have to wait until after Christmas break to hear back from EK on what to do for that. But for now, I've got this thing to mess around with. I'm going to call this one Frankenstein. It's got a Radeon and a GeForce card in here, okay? So I saw an article recently where somebody had combined the two different manufacturers' cards and successfully ran AMD fluid motion frames on top of a frame-generated rendering from an Nvidia card. So of course I wanted to test this for myself. I've been playing a bit of Modern Warfare 3 and Warzone again, and that's the title I'm going to test it in today. So before we get started, just to give an explanation on what frame generation and fluid motion frames are, Nvidia and AMD use slightly different methods. Nvidia uses a hardware-based algorithm that requires an Ada or RX 4000 series GPU. AMD's fluid motion frames is essentially a software solution, and they both use motion vectors and optical flow analysis to create a generated frame in between two actual frames. So while more frames traditionally means more performance, in this case, more frames just means a smoother visual output at the cost of actually more latency. It's similar to the way a 120 Hz TV works. A typical TV signal is transmitted at 60 Hz. When you turn on motion smoothing or the 120 Hz feature on a TV, basically it's doing the same thing. It's generating frames in between the actual frames that are there to create a smoother picture. So by definition, it can't improve performance. It can only kind of post-process the image to make it look better to our eyes. All right, so step one, make sure your display is plugged into your Radeon card and not your GeForce card. Step two, hit the Windows key, start typing in graphics, get to the graphics menu in Windows 11, select the game you're playing, hit options. I'm going to select specific GPU and make sure it's selected on the Nvidia GeForce RTX 4070 and not the 7900 XT. And then we'll go ahead and open Call of Duty. In the graphics options, we can see both cards here. I have the 4070 selected, unlimited frame rate, DLSS balanced, frame generation on. Rest are pure optimized typical settings, 120 FOV. Next, hit Alt-R, open up Adrenaline, enable AMD FMF, and we're good to go. So here's the 4070 and the 7900 XT, Nvidia frame generation in conjunction with AMD fluid motion frames, producing around 225 frames in 4K. Visually, it's butter. It's just incredibly smooth. It looks so good on this Samsung Odyssey Neo G8 4K 240 Hz panel. However, the latency is insane. So the 4070 is rendering the image. It's using frame generation, so there's latency off the bat. So then fluid motion frames is taking the frame generated images and creating interpolated images between those. So that latency is compounded and I can definitely feel it. It's most evident on side to side swinging motions. It just feels so mushy. However, this was expected. I know it's not good for multiplayer type games. This is just more for science. Here it is with AMD FMF turned off. Slightly more responsive, but I can still feel the frame generation lag. Lastly, here it is with frame generation and FMF turned off. The frame rate is a little lower, but it feels a lot more crispy and responsive. So that's all I got for this one. I hope the content I presented was helpful, informative, or entertaining in some way. If you have any video requests for Frankenstein here, let me know. Leave it in the comments below. As always, thanks for joining me, and I'll see you in the next one.